One hunter burst into the room, his face drenched in sweat, urgency burning in his eyes. He had news, urgent news. He bowed his head in respect before speaking. Cabo, the snake people are building a wall around their city and their castle, and we have intercepted a letter, one sent to snake people all over the world. They are calling for reinforcements. They are regrouping. Cabo's jaw tightened. He exchanged a glance with Titus, his second in command. They both knew what this meant. The snake people were preparing for war. The room erupted into murmurs, but Cabo raised a hand, silencing everyone. "Why don't we attack now?" one hunter suggested, his voice eager. "Before the wall is finished, we can catch them off guard." Cabo shook his head. "No, they're already fortifying themselves. If we attack now, we'll walk into a trap. We need to finish our own building projects here first. We need to be strong if they decide to come for us." The room nodded in agreement, but another hunter spoke up. "So we just let them regroup? Let them grow stronger?" Cabo's eyes darkened. "No," he said firmly. "We cut off their food and water supply. Where do they get their water from?" "The river," Titus answered. "It flows right into their city." "Then we cut the river," Cabo said, his voice steady. "We find a way to stop the water from reaching them. Without water, they'll weaken. And their food supply?" "They've had a good harvest this year," another hunter said. "But they also get food from nearby villages and other kingdoms." "We cut that off too," Cabo said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "We starve them. We weaken them from the inside. Then, when the time is right, we strike." The hunters murmured their approval, and Cabo continued. "Deploy a small group to handle the river and food supply. The rest of you focus on finishing our building projects here. We need to be ready for anything." The room buzzed with activity as the hunters began to divide tasks. Cabo stayed at the table, his eyes fixed on the map, his mind racing. The snake people were a threat, but he was confident in his plan. You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story. Still, as the day wore on, his thoughts kept drifting to one person, Naomi. He hadn't seen her all day. Was she avoiding him again? Or was something wrong? The thought of her being unwell gnawed at him, a worry he hadn't realized he carried. He tried to push it aside, focusing on the tasks at hand, but the concern lingered. By the time the sun set, Cabo was exhausted. The building projects were progressing, and the hunters stationed to monitor the snake people had reported back. Everything was in motion, but as he finally sat down to rest, his mind returned to Naomi. "Enough," he muttered to himself. He stood, his decision made. "I'll go see her." The knock came suddenly, sharp and insistent, cutting through the silence of Naomi's room. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't expecting anyone. The hour was late. Her hand hesitated on the lock before she finally turned it, the click echoing in the silence. The door creaked open, and there he stood, Cabo. His broad frame filled the doorway, his dark eyes piercing. The air between them crackled with an unspoken tension, heavy and electric. "Cabo," she breathed, her voice soft. "I wasn't expecting you." Her surprise was evident, her lips parting slightly as she took a step back. "I didn't see you today," he said, his voice low, gravelly. "I thought you were unwell." His eyes never left hers, intense and searching. "No, I'm fine," she replied, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. "It was just a busy day." He nodded slowly. "It was, for both of us." He paused, his eyes flickering over her face. "Can I come in?" Naomi hesitated, her pulse quickening. She turned without a word, leaving the door open behind her. Cabo stepped inside, the door closing with a soft but final thud. The sound made her flinch. They were alone now, truly alone for the first time. "Can I offer you something to drink?" she asked, her back to him as she moved toward the small table in the corner. Her hands trembled as she reached for a glass, the faint clink of crystal betraying her nerves. Cabo didn't answer. Instead, she heard his footsteps, slow, deliberate, drawing closer. Her breath hitched as she felt the heat of his presence behind her. She turned, and there he was, so close she could feel the warmth of his body, hear the steady rhythm of his breathing. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay," he said, his voice a low rumble that sent a shiver down her spine. "I am," she replied, her voice barely audible. Her eyes locked with his, and for a moment neither of them moved. "Maybe now," he began, his tone shifting. "We can—" "No, Cabo," she interrupted, her voice firmer now. "We have an agreement." His jaw tightened, a flicker of frustration crossing his face. "We can," he insisted, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You feel it too, don't you?" "We have an agreement," she repeated, her tone serious, "and you haven't fulfilled your part." "What part, Naomi?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" "This partnership," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her, "must be an official union. You know that. I won't settle for less." Cabo exhaled sharply, his chest rising and falling with the effort to keep his composure. "And what if I give you what you want?" she said, her voice soft. "And then you disappear. What then? I would have lost." "That won't happen," he said, his eyes pleading with her to understand. "You know it won't." His gaze swept over her, lingering on the curve of her lips, the rise and fall of her chest. "We're both adults, Naomi. We can do what we want." "Yes," she agreed, her voice trembling now. "And what I want is to be wed. Those are my terms. I thought you understood that, Cabo." Cabo growled low in his throat, a sound that was both primal and desperate. He stepped closer, his eyes dark with desire. "Do you not feel this?" he asked, his voice rough. "This electricity between us? This connection?" "I feel it," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But my conditions still stand. You know what you need to do." Cabo's eyes burned into hers, his breath hot against her skin. "You're testing me, Naomi," he said, his voice a low growl. "You're pushing me to my limits." "Then prove it," she challenged, her voice shaking. "Prove you're the leader they say you are, the man I know you can be." For a moment the room was silent, the tension between them so thick it was almost suffocating. Then, with a suddenness that took her breath away, Cabo closed the distance between them, his hands gripping her arms as he pinned her against the wall. Naomi gasped, her heart racing as she felt the heat of his body pressed against hers. "You think I would run from you?" he growled, his voice raw with emotion. "You think I would walk away from this?" "I don't know," she whispered, her voice breaking, "but those are my terms." Cabo's eyes darkened, his breath coming in ragged bursts. He leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear as he whispered, "You're killing me, Naomi." She felt her resolve waver, her body betraying her, as a shiver ran down her spine. But before she could respond, she twisted free, her hand reaching for the sword that hung on the wall. In one swift motion, she raised it, the blade gleaming in the dim light. "You need to go," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Now." Cabo's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in them. Before she could react, he moved, faster than she thought possible. The sword was wrenched from her grasp, clattering to the floor. He stood before her, the blade now on the ground, his chest heaving. "This is the first and last time," he said, his voice low and deadly, "that my wife will ever raise a sword at me. Do you understand?" Naomi's breath caught in her throat. "My wife." The words echoed in her mind, sending a jolt through her. But before she could respond, she saw it, the blood. It dripped from Cabo's hand, staining the floor. "You're bleeding," she said. "I'd rather bleed," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "At least this way. I can feel something." With that, he turned and walked out, the door slamming shut behind him. Naomi slid down the wall, her legs giving way as she hit the floor. Her mind raced, replaying his words over and over. "My wife." The words lingered, a spark of hope amidst the chaos. She smiled faintly, her breath hitching. There was still hope. The air was crisp, and the camp stirred as the hunters prepared to leave. Tendai stood among them, but his mind was elsewhere. He hadn't slept, His thoughts, relentless, consumed him. Across the camp, he spotted his father speaking to another hunter, his expression stern, his voice low. Something serious was being discussed, but before Tendai could dwell on it, Sia turned to address them. Tendai. Malaika. Malaika jolted to attention, her posture rigid. Sia's eyes were sharp, his voice steady and firm. It seems you put the life of the Brotherhood in danger last night. You were tasked to keep watch while we slept, but you failed. Malaika lowered her eyes, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had promised herself she would never let Sia down, and yet here she was. As punishment, Sia continued, his tone serious, you will hunt for the meal we will consume today. You will make the fire, and you will cook it. Tendai shifted uncomfortably, the urge to protest rising in his chest. But one glance at Malaika, at the way her shoulders tensed, made him swallow his words. Defending her would only embarrass her further. Sia studied them both for a moment before turning away. Dismissed. The hunters dispersed, preparing for their tasks, and Tendai let out a slow breath. Later that day, Tendai found a quiet moment with his father. Why did you do that, father? Tendai asked, his voice laced with frustration. I thought you encouraged me to speak to Malaika. Now you've embarrassed her in front of everyone. She'll never speak to me again. Sia smirked. I gave you another chance, Tendai frowned. Another chance? Sia nodded, a teasing glint in his eye. Another chance to be alone with her. Hunting. Together. He crossed his arms, amused. You should be thanking me. Tendai narrowed his eyes, then shook his head with a small chuckle. Unbelievable. Sia patted his son's shoulder. Use the opportunity wisely. Then his tone softened. What happened last night, by the way? Tendai hesitated. From what the hunter told you, everything went well, right? Well, Tendai exhaled, rubbing his temples. Not quite. Not even close. Sia folded his arms, intrigued. Go on. I couldn't find the words, Tendai admitted, frustration seeping into his voice. I was mumbling. I don't know, just off my game. She poured her heart out to me, and all I could say was, I'm sorry, like an idiot. Sia let out a deep, knowing laugh. Tendai scowled. This isn't funny. Sia shook his head. It's not funny, it's familiar. Tendai frowned, confused. He understood all too well. He was also struggling with his own feelings toward Pesa. Last night, when everyone slept, he had gone looking for her scent, her tracks. He had even set a few distractions for the hunters to follow to make sure they wouldn't go directly to her. He was exhausted. The night had been long. But he could not share this with his son. Then Sia turned to his son, his expression serious now. Listen to me, Tendai. Speak from your heart. Tell her how you feel. It doesn't matter how silly you sound. Just say it. Tendai nodded, his mind lost in thought. Sia clapped a hand on his shoulder, a bittersweet smile on his lips. Don't make the same mistakes I did. The sun was setting. Tendai found Malaika near the edge of the camp, her back to him as she adjusted her hunting gear. We need to start the meal hunt, he said, his voice steady but urgent. The sun's going down. Malaika didn't turn around. Okay, she said quietly, her tone clipped. She slung her bow over her shoulder and started walking into the forest without waiting for him. Tendai followed, the silence between them heavy and suffocating. After a while, Malaika stopped and turned to him. We should split up, she said, still avoiding his eyes. We'll cover more ground that way. Wait, Tendai said, his voice pleading. Malaika. She sighed, finally looking at him. What? I'm sorry for what happened yesterday, he said, his words spilling out in a rush. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't realize. I forgive you, she interrupted sharply. Let's keep moving. We don't have time for this. Not like this, Malaika. Please, Tendai begged, stepping closer. We need to talk. Malaika's eyes flashed with frustration. Tendai, we can't fail at this again. We have to bring back a meal for the team. I can't fail your father twice. I don't have that luxury. We'll catch something, I promise, Tendai said, his voice firm. But we need to... Before he could finish, Malaika turned and disappeared into the trees on the other side. Tendai stood there, his heart pounding, unsure of what to do. Then an idea struck him. If he could hunt quickly and bring back something impressive, maybe he'd have another chance to talk to her, to make things right. The hunt was on. Tendai moved silently through the forest, his senses sharp. He could smell a wild boar nearby, its scent strong and unmistakable. He followed the trail, his movements careful and deliberate. At the river, he crouched low, his eyes scanning the area. There it was, a massive boar drinking from the water. It was big enough to feed the entire team twice over. Tendai's heart raced. This was his chance. With a swift, precise motion, he struck. The boar fell and Tendai moved quickly to prepare it, cleaning it by the river with practiced efficiency. When he was done, he hoisted the animal onto his shoulders and headed back into the forest to find Malaika. He found her near a clearing, a small rabbit dangling from her hand. When she saw his catch, her eyes narrowed and she looked annoyed. "Well, it seems the hunt is over," she said dryly, glancing at the massive boar. "Yes," Tendai said, setting the boar down, "and now we need to talk." Malaika crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "What is there to talk about, Tendai?" "Everything," he said, stepping closer. "Talk to me, Laika, please." She looked away, her voice bitter. "I wish I were half as good a hunter as you are. Maybe then my name would mean something. My father's gone. My sister married well. But me, I can't even manage that. The only thing I want now is to be a great hunter, like Nala, a legend. I want to learn from your father. And you, Tendai, you're just a distraction. So please just let me go. We're better off as friends." Tendai's chest tightened. "No," he said firmly. "I don't want to be friends with you, Malaika. I love you." Her breath hitched, her eyes widening in surprise. She hadn't expected that. Tendai stepped closer, towering over her, his voice soft but intense. "I'm sorry I never realized it before. I never saw you. But now I do, Malaika. You're the only thing I see. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I dream about you all the time. You consume my every thought. So now you know why we can't just be friends. Please say something." Malaika stared at him, her heart racing. Was he being sincere? Was this real? She searched his eyes, looking for any hint of deception, but all she saw was raw honesty. "Are you just saying this because of what happened last night?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No," Tendai said without hesitation. "I've felt this way since the day of the ceremony. When I saw you dancing with that hunter, I knew then. Give me a chance, Malaika. I'll show you." Those were the words she had wanted to hear for so long. She loved him so much it hurt, and now, as she looked into his eyes, she could see that he meant every word. Tendai stepped even closer, his hand brushing against hers. He wanted to kiss her, but he didn't know how to start. He had gone as far as he knew how, pouring his heart out to her. Now what? He looked at her lips, warm and inviting. Without thinking, he reached for her, his hand resting on the small of her back. She leaned into him, a soft moan escaping her lips. Tendai's heart raced as he lowered his face to hers, their lips meeting in a kiss that sent sparks through his entire body. The world around them faded away, leaving only the two of them lost in the moment. Malaika melted into his touch, her hands gripping his shoulders as the kiss deepened. It was everything she had dreamed of and more. But just as they were lost in each other, a low growl snapped them back to reality. They turned to see a black panther dragging their wild boar away into the shadows. Tendai cursed under his breath. "We've lost it." Malaika looked at the small rabbit in her hand and laughed softly. "I guess I'm the one who caught something after all." When they returned to camp, they found a large game roasting over the fire. Sia looked up, a knowing smile on his face. "Are you going to feed all the hunters with that small rabbit?" he teased. Malaika blushed, embarrassed, but Tendai just grinned, Our catch was stolen by a predator, he explained. Sia chuckled. Well, I knew the two of you wouldn't bring back anything, so I took it upon myself to hunt something for the team. Malaika looked away, her cheeks burning, but Tendai reached for her hand, pulling her close. In front of the entire team, he kissed her deeply, then turned to face them. Malaika is my girlfriend now, he declared. The team erupted into cheers, and Malaika felt like she might die of embarrassment. But as she looked at Tendai, her heart swelled with love. He was bold, fearless, and everything she had ever wanted, and for the first time she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Pesa and her small team had moved from one cave to another, bringing their people together. They had managed to mobilize a group of about 20 snake people. This group was big enough. They had to go back now. If they grew any larger, she wouldn't know how to move them. This was their first trial, and it had to succeed. She wanted to prove to Queen Asa that she could be trusted with a bigger group, but for now, this would have to suffice. She looked at them, their hopeful eyes fixed on her. Every time she had encountered a family or a small group, she had delivered a passionate speech about how they would unify at Snake Island under their Queen Asa, the deliverer of their people and their champion. She had been bold, and now it was time to return. The hunters had spread out, but they only moved during the day. She had determined that they would have to travel at night to evade detection. So far, they had managed to do so successfully. They had a special ointment they applied to their skin, masking their scent and confusing the hunters' tracking abilities. So far, it was working. They just needed to reach Snake Island, and Pesa was determined to make that happen. She could see the exhaustion in her people's faces. They were tired. They had been walking for so long, but they were close. Just 2 more nights, and they would reach Snake Island. She smiled at the group, yet her heart pounded in her chest. So close, yet still so far away. Her thoughts drifted to Sia, to the last time she had seen him. She had wished things could have been different. She had loved looking at his face. He reminded her of a simpler time when the world was not as complicated as it was now. But now there was no space for those thoughts. They had to keep moving. Keep moving, she whispered to them. We're doing so well, she encouraged. In the distance, Sia watched them. He had found them. His eyes glowed with ancestral rage, but he was not here to harm them. He was here to protect them, to make sure nothing happened to them. At least now he knew they were close to Snake Island. Every night he watched over them, making sure nothing stood in their way. He longed to get Pesa's attention, to have just a moment with her, but he knew what was at stake. She had to stay focused. They had to get there. Pesa felt strange. A presence lingered in the air, unsettling her. It felt like a hunter's presence, but it was familiar. It felt like Sia. She shook her head, convincing herself it was just in her mind. And yet, she could smell him. She knew his scent very well, but there was no time to dwell on it. They had to move. One hunter rarely traveled alone. They usually moved in groups. But there was only one scent. She told herself it was nothing, just her imagination playing tricks on her. Keep moving, she urged her people, glancing around as unease crept through her bones. The guardian of the forest stood tall, her presence commanding, her eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. The snake people knelt before her, their heads bowed, their bodies trembling with a mix of fear and reverence. The guardian's voice was low, almost a growl, as she delivered the message from the god of the forest. There must be a sacrifice, she declared, her words slicing through the silence like a blade. A blood sacrifice. The gods demand it. Amina, the queen of the snake people, kept her head low, her voice steady. We are listening, guardian. We await your judgment. The guardian closed her eyes, swaying gently as if caught in a trance. Her head tilted, listening to a voice only she could hear. The snake people held their breath, their hearts pounding in unison. When her eyes snapped open, they burned with an otherworldly light. A cow must be slaughtered, she announced. Its blood must be poured onto the earth, to soothe the pain of the land, to bind the snake people to the forest. Amina exhaled sharply, her shoulders sagging with relief. She had feared the sacrifice would be one of her own. A person, a life. But this was mercy. The Guardian's lips curled into a faint smile as she noticed Amina's relief. "Next time, Queen Amina," the Guardian said, her voice cold and foreboding, "the gods will ask for more." Amina bowed deeply, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you, Guardian, for your mercy and your kindness. Please convey our gratitude to the god of the forest." The Guardian nodded, her gaze lingering on the Queen. "Once the ritual is done, the forest will welcome you. You will be one with it. You will protect this domain you once disrespected." With that, the Guardian turned and vanished into the shadows of the forest, leaving the snake people to prepare for the ritual. The celebration of their union with the forest began, the night alive with drumbeats and chants. But not everyone was at peace. Kwame stood at the edge of the festivities, his eyes locked on Diallo. He had been watching him all evening, his mind racing with questions. Diallo could feel Kwame's gaze, but he avoided it, his thoughts consumed by Nandi's absence. She hadn't been seen all day. She had missed the Guardian's visit, the ritual, the celebration. Something was wrong. When Diallo finally reached Nandi's room, his breath caught in his throat. Nandi lay on her mat, her face half covered in scales, her skin slick with sweat. She was trembling, her breaths shallow and uneven. "Nandi," Diallo whispered, rushing to her side. "What's going on?" "I can't keep anything down," she groaned, her voice weak. "I'm pregnant, Diallo." Diallo's heart sank, pregnant and transforming. Here, in the camp of the snake people, this was a disaster. "Did you take the pills?" he asked, his voice urgent. "Yes," she gasped, "but I vomited them right out. I've been trying all day." "Why didn't you send for me?" Diallo demanded, his worry turning to frustration. "So they could see me like this?" Nandi shot back, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "No, brother, I couldn't." Diallo paced the room, his mind racing. Going home wasn't an option. Not like this. He looked at Nandi, her pain etched into every line of her face. He had to be strong for her. He had to find a way. But what could he do? Outside, the celebration continued, the drumbeats echoing through the night. Samuel found Kwame standing alone, his eyes still fixed on the path Diallo had taken. Samuel hesitated, then stepped closer, his breath reeking of beer. "You're enjoying the festivities?" Kwame asked, his tone flat. "Yes," Samuel replied, his words slurred. "This is different." "Well, enjoy it," Kwame said, turning to leave. "Wait," Samuel called, his voice sharp. "I need to speak to you." Kwame paused, his eyes narrowing. "What about?" Samuel stepped closer, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. "Stay away from Nala." Kwame frowned. "What are you talking about?" "She came here for you, didn't she?" Samuel snapped. "I didn't ask her to come, but she did. Stay away from her. She's mine." Kwame shook his head, his patience wearing thin. "I'm not standing in your way. If you want her, win her heart. Don't drag me into this." Samuel's eyes blazed with fury. "You don't understand. Her heart is with you. You need to reject her. Make her see you want nothing to do with her." Kwame sighed, running a hand over his face. "Samuel, you're drunk. Go sleep it off." Samuel's rage boiled over. He lunged at Kwame, swinging a clumsy fist. Kwame sidestepped easily, and Samuel stumbled, falling face first into the dirt. Kwame stepped on Samuel's back, his voice low and dangerous. "Stay down," Kwame warned. "I have bigger problems to deal with. If you want Nala, fight for her, but don't come at me again. Next time I won't be so kind." Samuel lay still, his fists clenched, his pride shattered. The battle lines had been drawn. He would not forget this humiliation. But for now, the night belonged to the forest. The drums pounded, the fires burned, and the snake people danced, unaware of the storm brewing in their midst. And that, my dear tribe, brings us to the end of yet another gripping chapter in our Snake People and Hunter saga. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Cabo is deep in the throes of a military strategy, orchestrating a plan to cut off food and water from the Snake People, all while navigating a treacherous dance of seduction with Naomi. But Naomi has her own terms, and Cabo may find himself ensnared in more ways than one. Meanwhile, Malika and Tendai finally confront their feelings, sealing their love with a kiss. Tendai, bold and unwavering, proclaims Malika as his in front of everyone. But love is not the only force at play. Pesa has gathered 20 snake people, ready to deliver them to Snake Island. Yet she remains unaware of the silent eyes watching her, Sia, her silent guardian. Meanwhile, the forest guardian has spoken, and her decree is final. This time a cow will be slaughtered, and the snake people are grateful for her mercy. Elsewhere, Nandi battles a transformation she can no longer suppress. Pregnant and unable to take the pills that keep the snake at bay, she begins to change, right in the heart of the snake camp. What will she and Diallo do when there's no turning back? And then there's Samuel. His vendetta against Kwame runs deeper. The storm is brewing. The saga continues. Join us next time as we unravel more secrets, betrayals, and fates entwined in this ever-expanding legend. Until then, stay wild, stay curious, and stay ready for what's to come. Want to support the channel and become an even bigger part of our tribe? You can join for as little as the cost of a coffee each month. Your support helps me continue creating the content you love, but of course, just having you here is already more than enough. Thank you for being part of this journey. To those of you who have already joined the tribe, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are truly the heartbeat of this channel. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.